The LG C series OLEDs have quietly been some of the most consistent TVs in the entire industry. Like year after year, if someone asked me, hey, what's a safe mid-range OLED recommendation? The answer was almost always the same. I'd say just get the LG C series. No drama, no weird compromises, just a really solid OLED that delivers every single time. But here's where things get interesting. For 2026, LG is finally shaking things up, and this is perhaps the first time that we're seeing something genuinely new in this lineup, the LG C6H OLED Evo AI. And I know that's quite a mouthful, and the one that I've been using is the 77-inch model. Now, there is a larger 83-inch version, which honestly starts pushing this into full in-home theater territory. And after spending time with it, I kept thinking, okay, this is still a C series, but it definitely doesn't feel like last year's C series. So let's talk about it. The LG C series has always lived in this really nice sweet spot. They give you a lot of what people love about LG flagship G series OLEDs without completely destroying your bank account. And that balance is exactly why the C series has become one of the easiest TV recommendations that we can make. But if we're being honest, for the last few years, the upgrades have been fine, good, incremental, and nothing bad. But also nothing that makes me go, wow, okay, this feels meaningfully different until now. Because this year, LG introduced something that we've never really seen before in the C series, a submodel, the C6H. And if you're confused thinking, wait, isn't there also just a regular C6? The answer is yes. And this is actually important to note because this C6H is basically LG taking the traditional C series formula and laying more of its premium Evo AI experience on top. So think of it like this. The regular C6 is a classic, dependable C series. The C6H is smarter, more refined, and more of an adaptive version of that experience. It's like the iPhone Pro to the standard iPhone. And honestly, after using it, I do think you notice the difference. It's nothing dramatic, but still quite meaningful. But let's zoom out for a second. The LG C series has become one of the reference points for the OLED market because they hit that perfect balance with flagship level picture quality, without flagship pricing, excellent gaming performance, and great size options like the 77-inch version that you see here, and now an 83-inch option as well. And over the years, they've built a reputation for one thing above everything else: consistency. If you recommend a C series OLED to someone, you know exactly what they're getting. Great blacks, great motion, great for gaming, and great movie performance. And there's no surprises there. That's why the C series is almost always in the conversation when somebody asks, what mid-range OLED should I buy? But the trade-off has always been year-over-year improvements always feel kind of small, like, yep, it's slightly brighter and slightly better processing. That's great, but nothing that feels transformative. Now, the C6H is probably the first time in a while where I actually felt that LG is trying to move the line forward. So let's talk about what LG actually changed here. Because I'm going to be honest, when TV companies start saying things like, we bring AI powered experience, my eyes usually glaze over a little. Like, okay, that's cool, great marketing. But after spending time with the C6H, some of it actually really matters. So let's go over Evo AI. The C6H is part of LG's Evo AI lineup, which basically combines their premium OLED panel technology with deeper AI processing powered by their latest Alpha chip. And the big thing that LG is pushing this year is smarter picture optimization in real time. Now, compared to the C5, LG is claiming meaningful brightness improvements, especially in HDR highlights and bright scenes. And in fairness, I actually did notice this. Not in a holy crap, this changes everything kind of a way, but in a, oh, this handles daytime viewing better than I expected kind of way. And if you own a C5, yes, you will notice the difference, especially when it comes to brighter rooms. Now let's talk AI, because this is where I think expectations need to be a little realistic. Yes, you're getting things like smarter adaptive brightness, AI Picture Pro, AI upscaling, AI sound enhancements, and personalized recommendations. But here's my honest take. Do these completely transform the experience? No, not dramatically, but over time, you do start noticing small quality of life improvements. And I'll give you an example right now. The TV adjusts brightness more naturally. Lower quality YouTube videos clean up better. Streaming content looks slightly sharper. Dialogue sounds cleaner. It's small stuff, but all of this small stuff does add up. And honestly, that's kind of the story with this TV. Now, sitting down with the 77-inch C6H, the first thing that stood out wasn't necessarily a spec, it was just how balanced the image felt. Bright scenes don't feel overly aggressive, dark scenes still feel cinematic, and everything in between just feels controlled, stable. And honestly, that's the word that I keep coming back to when I describe this TV: stable. Nothing feels like it's struggling. And I will say that on a 77-inch panel, weaknesses do become obvious real fast, but this TV holds together really nicely. Now let's talk about bright room performance, because this is where I noticed the biggest improvement over older C series TVs. Normally, when it comes to OLED, daylight can sometimes take away a little bit of that magic. But here, I didn't feel like I had to constantly fight the room. You still get beautiful contrast and rich colors and OLED blacks, but the image stays punchier during the day. So I do have a small window in my media room, and when I have the window open, it still looks nice. Now, it's not mini LED bright, but let's be realistic. It's definitely improved. And honestly, for most living rooms, I do think this will be more than enough. And it's great when you're watching movies or streaming. And at night, this thing still absolutely feels like OLED. You get perfect blacks, insane contrast, beautiful depth, and watching movies on this feels so freaking cinematic, especially Dolby Vision content. The processing also feels much cleaner this year. Older content gets cleaned up nicely, low bitrate streaming looks better, there's less noise in darker scenes. Again, none of this is dramatic. It's just refined. Now let's discuss gaming, as it is still one of LG's biggest strengths, and the C6H absolutely keeps that reputation going. You're getting high refresh rates, VRR with G-Sync and FreeSync Premium, super low input lag, and instant OLED response times. And overall, games just feel incredibly responsive. But here is what stood out to me the most: consistency. Fast motion stays clean. HDR highlights pop more, and even chaotic scenes don't feel messy. Everything stays composed. Now here is where this TV gets interesting, because competition is actually really good right now. For example, you've got the Samsung S90F. This is probably the most direct competitor. If you want brighter, punchier colors and more of that immediate wow factor, Samsung probably still wins. But if you want something that feels more balanced, better for gaming, and a little more predictable, then I lean towards this LG. Oh, and let's not forget the Sony Bravia 8 II. If movies are your absolute priority, then Sony still has arguably the best processing in the business, especially for cinematic content. But you usually will pay for that. And if gaming matters, then LG feels more versatile. And you might be wondering, FaZe, what about the LG C5? And honestly, that's a pretty good question, because if the C5 gets heavily discounted, then that could honestly be the smarter buy for some people, especially if price matters most. But if you're asking me, is the C6H the first meaningful C series upgrade in a while? I actually think the answer is yeah. Kind of. All right, so where does the LG C6H OLED Evo AI land for me? This feels like the most meaningful shift in the C series in years. Not because LG reinvented OLED, and not because the AI suddenly changes your life, but because the overall experience feels more refined, more polished, and more adaptable to real life. And after using the 77-inch model, I do wish I kind of went for that 83-inch model, but it feels like LG finally pushed the C series forward in a way that people will actually notice. For years, the C series has been the TV that I recommend when somebody wants the safest option. But now, the C6H might be the first time in a while where safe doesn't feel boring. If you enjoyed this video, drop a like, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already done so. We've got amazing new TV reviews coming soon, and we'll catch you in the next one.